is to talk about the stages of fatherhood. I want you to take your Bible and turn with me to the Proverbs number 22. Proverbs 22, and I want to look at one verse, and then I want to spring off into this, the idea that there are phases or stages of fatherhood. And I have found four of them, four distinct phases of fatherhood. And in these four stages of fatherhood, I found that there are certain positives, uniquenesses of benefit, and then also some very strong pitfalls. Now, I got to make a definition before I even get started with this, that there is a big difference between what makes fathers and what makes dads. A father is someone who believes that by donating his sperm for creation, he has done his duty. A dad is someone who gets up early every day and does whatever he can do to provide for those he loves. He might have to dig ditches. He might have to flip hamburgers. He might deliver pizzas. He might work in a factory, or he might do all of those things. He might not own a suit and tie, but he teaches the value of hard work, not because he's looking for someone to help him mow the grass, but because he knows that idleness leads to trouble. He realizes his job is to make his children productive citizens, faithful husbands or wives, and the ones who will stand one day and give an account. In our day, there is an epidemic of deserters. Fathers who are AOL, who have checked out, abandoned or neglected their responsibilities as dad. And you might have had one of those. I want to tell you it takes a lifetime to overcome the obstacles that are placed in your path when dads are absent. There are devastating effects on an absent father. It's amazing the statistics that are thrown out of those who grow up in fatherless homes. They're 5 times more likely to commit suicide. Depression and anxiety follows children whose fathers have checked out. Children of fatherless families are 32 times more likely to be incarcerated. There is a noticeable decrease in fatherless families involving education, dropout rates, income levels, lower job securities, and an increase in divorce rates. All wrapped around in dads who have checked out. And I'm telling you, there's an epidemic in our day of those who have done just that. There is a substantially increased rates in substance abuse and increases in social and mental behavior issues. Today, I don't want to talk a lot about the absenteeism, even though we could spend the entire time just dealing with fathers who are absent. But they're not here, are they? It's interesting that the absentee fathers also have a tendency not to show up to church on Sunday, and also don't show up on Father's Day, even though they know that they're going to get a candy bar. It's amazing. Today, I'd like to honor those who are sticking with it, who are the living examples of stress under pressure, those who have crossed over and even graduated to the final phase of fatherhood, in which we're going to recognize here in just a few minutes. But before we do all that, I want to look at one passage of Scripture. It's found in Proverbs chapter 22 and verse number 6. Start children off on the way they should go, Dad, And even when they're old, they won't turn from it. Now, from a theological point of view, I love this passage because it flies right in the face of predestination that says, everything's already determined and, whatever is going to be, and you don't have any control over it. It is whatever it is. But then it also flies right in the face of Arminianism, which means that it's all up to you. This passage of Scripture talks greatly about the role of dads. And we think about that, the very first phase in fatherhood is what I call anticipation and preparation. Now help me here just a minute, guys. The number one response to hearing that you're going to be a father is fear. Admit it? I mean, when Virginia comes home from the doctor's office and says, I'm pregnant, your heart goes up in your throat, even though she's playing. Your heart still goes up in your throat, and you go through this massive responsibility thing. As strong as I am I going to be strong enough to defend my family? Those are thoughts. Am I going to be able to stand up to the challenge? Will we be able to go to the Cubs game and stand and catch a foul ball and give it to your kid? There's a great responsibility here. What if you miss the foul ball? And your kid lives forever with the idea that your dad failed at getting you the foul ball. Now, think about it. Am I going to be able to live up to this responsibility? Am I capable? Am I capable? Can I express the love and the kindness? Will I be like my dad? There's a great fear there that I be like my dad. Swap it around. Maybe you had a great dad. I knew a couple of your dads. And, I couldn't live up to that. And that'd be really tough. The bar was set pretty high. In my particular case, the standard was pretty low. And I figured if you showed up every night, you got passed. But still fear. I got to realize how many of these habits that I have, how many of these mannerisms that I picked up from my dad. I never really grabbed my hair and pulled my hair out like I watched my dad do, but it still left me. I remember my dad saying that the first girl turned it gray and the second girl made it all fall out. That's probably true. In my case, we just fell out. But who do I look to? That's the other area of fear. There isn't a whole lot of strong dads, strong men, nothing that you can look to on television. I guess, Mike Baxter on Home Improvement or Last Man Standing is about the closest thing that I can think of, but if you're a Democrat, you're not going to want to look at him either. But who do I look to? Who do I dare tell that I'm scared? Scared of what this person that I'm in charge of might end up doing or thinking. Am I weird? I don't even get to talk to anybody about it. I'm so grateful for the leaders of our church who we have to put as in the forefront that really helped me through those years before we even were to have children. I guess the second response after fear is money. Am I going to have enough? Is my wife going to be able to work? can we make it on what I make alone? What would be the cost? I know a guy that they had 5 children. He says that is all the children that we could possibly have, and he went in and had a medical procedure not to have any more children. His wife filed for divorce. She wanted much more than 5. Went in and had a reversal and ended up with twin boys. No, twin girls. I'm sorry, twin girls. And then after that had 2 more and ended up with 9 children. You talk about thinking about money. I got to tell you, looking at it from this side of life, 20-something years later, every one of those kids have a college fund. Every one of those kids, have money that's put aside. And it's amazing the discipline that was involved. I don't think that I could be trusted with 2. They have 9. What's the answer? What's the answer to all of this? Where's the answer? I draw your attention to a couple passages in God's Word about fear. Matthew chapter 7, verses 9 through 12. Which of you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, that you'll give him a snake? If you then know how evil you are, and know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Trust in the Lord is the answer. It's always the answer to overcoming fear. It might not be necessarily fear that you're going to be a father. It might be fear that you're going to be a mother. It might be just a fear of the future that you live in. And the answer to all of that is trusting the Lord with all your heart, not leaning in your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledging him, and allowing him to direct your path. I guess the second phase of fatherhood is the years of what I call invasion, intrusion, rebellion, and surrender. And it's not the kid that's surrendering. It's you. Phase 2, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, all of these have really nothing to do with you. They have nothing to do with like your age or who you are or your status in life. It all revolves around your children. The years before are the years of preparation and fear. The phase 2 is when you first find out that there's going to be a baby coming into your home. I call that invasion. I call it invasion because that's exactly what it was with me, is that someone was coming into this home and immediately, you know what happened? Everything changed. All of the stuff that we had to be put up. And as they grew, everything that we had to be put up higher. To this day, we're still looking for a pawn of my chess set that I made in the 7th grade. I mean, we're still looking for it. I'm convinced that she ate it. And it's still there. Anyway, okay, so this new person comes to live with you. The next thought is, for how long? You start looking around, and some of them are there forever. And I mean, this thing is a major, major invasion. From day one, you start making preparations for the moment they're going to leave. But when it happens, you cry. They steal your heart, and then one day, they take it with them. And you never regain it. And there's never a day for the rest of your life that when the phone rings, your heart doesn't get up in your throat. Am I right, Dad? That's the way it is. And they get stronger and stronger and stronger. And guess what? You have to as well. As a child grows, they become more invasive. They demand more and more of your time and your energy. They become more and more aggressive and intrusive and interfering. Hey, man, that's terrible that you think that. I'm just telling you the truth. You know, they learn to walk, and things get put up a little higher. And then they learn to talk, and your life at that moment is over forever. Because the first thing you say is, don't tell mom. And as soon as mom walks in the door, the first words out of their mouth is what you told them not to tell mom. They learn at an outstanding rate, and you have a very difficult time of keeping up. Seemingly a few months go by, and then they go to school. You think, oh, this is a great time of relief. You know, they're no longer right under my feet all the time, but instead it becomes a time of involvement, a time of they take over your schedule at that moment. They're involved in school activities, and there's conflicting in work schedules, and you have to juggle and share. And then, if you have two of them, at that moment, you become a parent. You see, if you've only got one child, you always know who did it. But the second that you have the second one, there is no way under God's green earth that you ever get to know what really happened. And generally speaking, they get very old, like out of the house and gone, and then you really do find out what happened. It takes that long, and sometimes never. I've said that if you don't believe in miracles, then there are these people, they just think everything's natural, there's no miracle. You needed to come by our house between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning. Because between 7 and 8 o'clock, everybody gets up, gets dressed, gets breakfast, and gets to work and school on time. And if that wasn't a miracle, you've never seen a miracle. You don't know what it's like when you have to take a 6-year-old and put their hair in a ponytail. I'm telling you, it's the biggest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. And I got to tell you, I failed at it. And we ended up going over, I think, to Faith or Barbara's or somewhere and let them do it for me. And you don't ever get to finish in trying to give the answers. You'll never finish giving the answers. I mean, there are so many answers. There are some times that you need a full-blown PowerPoint presentation. And other times you just say, I don't know. And then there's the why question. I think I've said this before. I've lived with this the last 20 years. I do not answer why questions. I have no idea why. It's just 'cause. But about 12 to 13, the person that you brought home, that you were so involved in, that was so intrusive and so invasive, becomes the person that you've never seen before. And they become a teenager. You know, if I'm not painting a picture here for you to give up on this idea of being a father, I'm doing my best. But it's all true, is it not? Have what I said, Dad, so far true? About 12, 13, this person that you love, done everything for, becomes a teenager. And first you wonder, where is the time gone? And then, can you possibly lock this person away and never see him again? Because this is the time of rebellion. The scary time. The time of experimentation. Where'd the owner's manual go? That got thrown out. I mean, with the alcohol and the drugs and the sex and 1,000 other vices. Getting fed up with school. All of the pointless subjects like algebra that I have to take. And then there are those teachers that have no humanity whatsoever. They are just totally, totally absent of any reason. You've heard it, haven't you, Dad? I mean, they expect me to be on time in that class. They expect me to bring my book to that class. They expect me to do my homework. How unreasonable. And of course, what do, Dad? Well, according to the teacher, you side with them and tell them that's okay. I know you really didn't. The pressure multiplies with the idea of absenteeism. The problem multiplies if you get a divorce. And let's face it, 50% of all these marriages ended up in two-family households in which now there's competition and you're in the middle. You're convinced that you need to go to school yourself to learn the art of the deal. Because this person that you brought up is now the greatest negotiator that has ever walked the face of the earth. And let me tell you something, and it's true. I went to school for 8 years to be able to stand here in front of you, and a teenager will challenge your theology. And the answers that you gave in a theology classroom will not give 1 point of credit when you say those things to your teenager. They will challenge your belief system. And I don't know of one guy that started out believing X that after teenagers still holds to X. It changes. It's possible, it is really possible to lose sight of the goal during this time period. It's the second phase of fatherhood, and it's probably the time in which you have the greatest impact. Let's see if I have this right. The basic idea is that you have this child and you quit your job and stay home so you can be with the child. And then when the child gets up to about 6th, 7th grade, you say, well, I've done my part and I'm going to go back to work. Isn't that the typical thing that we hear? Let me just tell you, the opposite is true. When you have the child, work all that you can. When they get to about the 6th grade, quit your job. Because it's the only way that you're ever going to stay up with what's going on. And probably during this time period, you will teach more than you've ever taught in your entire life. And you never, ever say a word. These are the formative years. Oh, I thought those were between 3 and 7 years old. I'm here to tell you the formative years are between 12 and 15. Most difficult. In Deuteronomy chapter number 6 and verse number 6, you know what it says? I'll give you a hint. These commandments I give to you today, this is a strong hint, should be put upon your heart. Impress them upon your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them up as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorpost of your house and on the gates. Because if you don't, you lose. I suppose that I did more teaching in the car than any other time that I was ever with either one of the kids. And you know, I've already told you how you get them up in the morning. For those of you who have young children that want to sleep and sleep and sleep, teenagers who want to sleep and sleep and sleep, I've got the perfect thing for you to do. Are you ready? All you got to do is walk in there and start singing to them. You walk in there and say, you know, up from the bed she arose. With a mighty triumph o'er the foe she arose. You won't get to the second verse. You know, the Lord said to Noah, he's going to build a floody, the Lord said. And then, of course, one of the kids, you could walk in there and say, hey, look, a flock of turtles. And they jump up every time and look. I'm telling you that getting them up in the morning is critical. Because if you don't start getting them up in the morning when they're 3 and 4 and 5 years, 3 and 4 and 5 years old, you have lost when they're 12, 13, and 14. And you've got to recite it over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 24 tells us, he who spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is careful to discipline him. I go back to my text that I started with. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. No one knows your children better than you do. They're bent in a certain way. Call it their temperament, call it their personality, call them their traits. I feel like that they're born with them. And no one knows that better than you do. And so what you've got to do is know which way they are bent. And sometimes be the one that pulls it back to straighten it out. And other times to focus it so that it bends in the right direction. I planted a tree in the little area right in front of our picture window. I wanted, some kind of ornamental thing. I don't know a lot about that called horticulture. I don't know a lot about trees. I don't know a lot about vines and bushes and shrubbery and grass, right? But I wanted this ornamental thing in front of the picture window. And so I go over to the nursery and I walk all around and I say, I like that. And so I picked that and had that planted. Hear me? I had it planted. So it came up and it had beautiful blooms on it. And it wasn't too much longer that the blooms started to have buds on it. And then pretty soon I found out I planted an apple tree. Now, I didn't necessarily want apples in my front yard in front of my picture window. Now, what's my point? Okay, you have been entrusted to this person to determine whether or not they're an apple tree or an oak tree. And if you're going to want apples, and you see that the bark is kind of rusty and crusty and thick, I give you a hint. You don't have an apple tree. And there will be no purpose in you spraying it and pruning it to get apples, because all you're going to get is acorns. You want an oak tree and it's flowering, I'm giving you a hint. You're not going to get any acorns out of a flowering oak tree. And the same thing's true about children. They've been entrusted to you. No one knows them better than you do. Nobody. Well, there's a third phase in fatherhood. Oh boy. The third phase in fatherhood is when they leave. They leave your world and they enter a world of their own. Now, don't you think that fear goes away? It doesn't go away at all. Matter of fact, at this point, it multiplies. Suddenly, and without notice, your child graduates from your immediate attention, and they all go off surfing in Indonesia, backpacking in Europe, volunteering in Africa, or lying around doing absolutely nothing, and it all drives you crazy. Your third phase of fatherhood. They might get a job. They might start out on their career. Or they might go off to college for the next 3 to 15 years. There are some expenses that you're going to have to pick up with. Don't think that you get any input. Don't think that you get to say, well, this class isn't really productive, or this one's not in your major. Or maybe they go 2 or 3 years and change their major and start all over again. It was at this time period that Simra worked for an attorney. I was convinced that she had a written agreement with her mother that as long as she was in school, her mother was going to pay it all. So she changed her major 2 or 3 times to extend the time. Which time we had to find a new attorney. rewrite the group, rewrite the contract. You know, when they go to college, you're going to see fees that you never heard of before. And then there's going to be the time in which they were late, and they parked where they weren't supposed to park, and they got one of these slips of paper put on their window, and then they didn't tell you until the moving van, the van thing came up to move the car because it was going to be impounded. Maybe it was one particular night when you're dead asleep, and they, for some reason, don't sleep at night. They want to sleep in the daytime. And you're awake in the daytime, and they don't sleep at night, even though you think that they're sleeping and you're sleeping, and they decide they want to go see some boyfriend or girlfriend that lives 60 miles away, but they don't want to take their car. So they take your car. And so while they're out with your car, they do something to it, and it totally runs out of antifreeze. But they don't care. It's your car. So they drive it home until they almost get home. And then they get one of their boyfriends to hook up to it and push your car into your garage, and they go in and pretend that they were sleeping all night long. You remember? This is the phase of fatherhood that you want them to leave, and they don't. You know, if you kick them out of the house, that doesn't solve your problem. No matter what you do, you're going to worry all the time. Well, let's see if I can speed this up just a little bit. Third phase of fatherhood. If everything goes well, and you live in a perfect world. If everything goes well, and you live in a perfect world. Did you hear that? Hear that great big if out there? They find someone. Now, understand, you're very hopeful. You've been praying this prayer for a long, long time. God protect. And then you realize no one is good enough for the person that you just brought up in your family. And they bring him home, or they bring her home. And after all, my child is perfect. And they're flawed. Might be hard to accept, but at this particular phase in your fatherhood, your child is an adult. Your relationship with your child has now changed. Your role has changed. You are no longer fully responsible, but you're still fully engaged and still live in fear. With some people, their children never grow up. With others, they're perfect. With others, you just want to forget that they exist. In a perfect world, under the best circumstances, they become a person of interest. And then they get the smartest, most intelligent person in the world in their life. You. You see, up to this point, you're an idiot. Up to this point, from the time that just about a little after when they were able to talk, you became the dumbest person in the world, and at some point they really wonder how it is that you function at all. And then it becomes full circle. Am I right? Some of you people that have been there, somehow you wake up one day and you are the smartest person on the planet. You have no idea what you did and you have no idea what they did as well. And then there's this final phase of fatherhood in which you become grand. I said in the perfect world, under perfect circumstances, they have found this perfect person and they have become this adult in which you have, elevated 17 stages ahead of where you used to be, and then they have children, and then, that at least used to be the way it was done. It used to be that they come up in your family and then they find somebody and they date and then they get married and then they have children. You know the reality of this world? They find someone, they have a child, then they don't like that person no more, and then you raise the child. That's the reality of the world that we live in. Either way, you become a grandfather. The hard decisions never get easy, and they never get any easier. During this time, if you have, you hear that if, a little spared cash, do you lessen the burden of your child by helping them through some of these times, or do you withhold it because you went through it and they need to go through it as well? And how do you know? At that point, your prayer changes from, Lord, protect, to God, I need wisdom. You invest in their ideas. You lend them money for what seemingly is good causes. You co-sign a loan. That's where you're at this phase of your life. The wheel has come full circle, and now your child is now the parent, and you're the grandfather. I got to tell you, this can be the greatest blessing that could ever come down the tube, or it could be the greatest burden that you've ever faced in your entire life. A blessing because it's true. The purpose of a grandfather is to spoil his grandchildren rotten. And then when the wheels start to fall off, they hand the kid back to the parent and they go back home. That's the role of a grandfather. I heard a particular guy describe his father as a grandfather. He says this was the guy that growing up never had a nickel to his name. And every single time that I needed anything, he was flat busted. And now I have kids, and the first thing he does when he walks into the house is start handing out money to all of them. I don't even know my dad anymore. It's the next phase in your life as a grandfather. You become a parent. Some grandfathers have to be the parent because the child checks out. Remember the absenteeism, the AOL? And so you have to pick up where your child left off. You're likely to develop a very special relationship with your grandkids, especially if you're what we call a jingle-jingle grandpa. You know what a jingle-jingle grandpa is. You looked at me at blank stares when I said that. As soon as you walk into the room, a jingle-jingle grandpa reaches in his pockets and starts playing with the change in his pocket and starts figuring out ways to give out the quarters to his grandkids. Or are you going to have to be the disciplinarian and take on the chores of a parent? I remember one family moved away at this particular point in time. They said, we've worked for 40 years to retire. And this guy had retired twice, once in the military, once with the Postal Service. He had retired twice, and now he was a grandparent. And they moved. You say, my goodness, why'd they move? He says, I don't want to be in charge of a daycare. And I don't want to be the one that's responsible. I have an older brother that just sold his home, lived there for 30 years, lives within a couple miles of his grandkids. I asked, where are you going to live? He says, no farther than 2 miles from the grandkids. It's a special time of life. You have all these new problems. How do I stand aside and watch things go wrong? Most grandparents look forward to the birth of a grandchild, especially if it's the first grandchild, and they get all this pleasure out of getting to know the child without all the responsibilities involved in being a parent. But what do you do when the parents break up, when the parents mess up, when the parents aren't involved? Grandparents are bringing up grandchildren today. You might be in that case. In the real world, what do? Number one, you pray. Number two, you trust. And number three, you have to let go. There's several Bible verses that I have looked at, especially for this time. 1 Chronicles chapter 29, verse 17. I know, my God, that you test the heart and are pleased with integrity. Deuteronomy, the first chapter, verse number 29, follows, says, Then I said to you, do not be terrified. Do not be afraid of them. Now this is grandfathers and their grandchildren. Don't be afraid of them. The Lord your God, who is going before you, will fight for you as he did for you in Egypt, before your very eyes and in the desert. There you saw how the Lord your God carried you, as a father carries his son, all the way you went until you reached this place. Joshua chapter 1 and verse 9, be strong. Be courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. The Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua, the 24th chapter, and verse 15. And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods of your father served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. 1 Kings chapter 15, verse number 11. As Asa did what is right in the eyes of the Lord, as David, his father, had done. Malachi chapter 4, verse 6. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, or else I will come and will strike the land with a curse. Psalm 103 and verse 13. As fathers has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. Proverbs 3, verses 11 through 12. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father, the son he delights in. Proverbs 3, verse 32. For the Lord detests the perverse man, but takes the upright into his confidence. Proverbs 10, verse 9. The man of integrity walks securely, but he who takes crooked paths will be found out. Proverbs 14, verse 26. In the fear of the Lord, one has strong confidence, as his children will have a refuge. Proverbs 17, verse 24. A discerning man keeps wisdom in view, but a fool's eyes wander to the ends of the earth. Proverbs 17, verse 27. A man of knowledge uses words with restraint. A man of understanding with even temper. Proverbs 23, 22. Listen to your father, who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Proverbs 23, verse 24. The father of a righteous man has great joy. He who has a wise son delights in him. Matthew again, 7, verse 9 to 11. Or which of you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, you'll give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. Fathers, do not, listen to this word, exasperate. Do not take your children and push them to the point of exhaustion. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Colossians 3, verse 21. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they'll become discouraged. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 7. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as sons. For what son is not disciplined by his father? The answer is obviously the one that say, well. So here's my final word. Somebody say amen. So what have you blown? You heard all these things. You heard all of these phases that we go through, and you messed up. I mean, it's over. It's too late. I give you hope. Right now, today, you start out by getting things right. You get things right with God, and then be prepared to make things right with your son or your daughter. I'm telling you that when it comes to your child and you bring this child into this world, it might take you the rest of your life to make things right. But you've been given a stewardship. You've been given a great, great responsibility. And you're sort of like the gardener. You don't own them. You say they belong to you, but you don't own them. They have been entrusted to you. And at some point, you say, Lord, I have done everything I know how to do, and they're yours. And I have to give them back to you. I pray, Lord, that I have taken out all the dead shoots. I've weeded out and I have pruned. I've kept them watered and fertilized so that they'll grow to be healthy and productive. Now, boy, they're yours. Now, what do? You continue to trust in the Lord. You will never, never be absent of fear. But your God is able, even in the midst